Hello, so welcome to lesson 2 on operational management. Now we're picking up in section 1 still where we left off from last week. We were speaking about how to start and structure your organizational strategy. Now I'm actually starting off right now on page 16 because we looked at a lot of the planning and what needs to go into your operational plan. However, now what we need to look for is implementing elements such as the organizational chart. Now, it is good to have a look at the organizational chart. Remembering you're leading and managing people's scenarios, there was elements of this in your scenario. Now, earlier on and last week, I've asked you to put in a McKinsey 7S model into your work. It would be nice if you want to go the extra mile to implement an organizational chart, just to say in your operational management plan, this is your practice manager at the top. Where do you sit in and how are the teams going to communicate? Again, just with a little narrative underneath it. And again, it just brings more skill and competence into your operational plan, as well as developing this as an actual theory. Now, really, structures is an important thing, okay? We've got to add that into the course book. But there needs to be other elements that we need to think about, such as the importance of contingency planning. Now, contingency planning looks at how you organize and change something. So your plan, you want it to work, okay? But we're not saying it might be right from day one. It might go wrong. Things might change, that's just life. So what you need to implement into operational strategy is the importance of contingency planning. I mean, contingency planning might be something that you need to put in, and we're going on to page 17 now of your ILM level 5 workbooks. Things like equipment failure. So what if something goes wrong in your operation plan? In terms of equipment breaking down, could there be a table that you could implement explaining how you'd resolve it? What about things like technological failure? You could add a little bit of data protection and GDPR. Premise not accessible. Okay, maybe not a problem in your surgery, but if it was, how would you do it? What if there was a problem in your supply chain? What if you're a dispensary clinic and there are issues with the supply of the drugs to your surgery? How does that impact it? How are you going to actually have a look at how you can still keep your patients happy? And that again could go into distribution and logistic failures and delays. Are there equipment or apparatus that you're using in the surgery to improve your operational plan slow in getting implemented? And I'm not just talking about physical, tangible things. What if you're looking at an IT problem, software being launched onto a platform or a website? How does that change? How do you deal with sickness? Okay, something that you're all probably capable of. How do you manage it if someone in your operational plan falls in sick? And what are you actually going to do, for example, if your targets are missed? Now, it's important to implement things like key performance indicators or targets into your operational plan. But what if that 2 months down the line you've missed or failed to meet that target? It could be important to write something about how you would approach the team in that. Performance management. Remember, we looked at that within the Managing People workbook. So there is some elements of the second unit which can be brought into your operational plan. So contingency planning is important, but what this section is also asking you to look at are elements which include policies, procedures, and operational planning. Now, I know from working with you all as operational or managers within your surgeries that this is an area that I don't really need to teach you in. You're kind of fully capable of understanding what policies and procedures are. So just something within your operational plan, it might be nice to mention how it's compliant with things like GDPR, the health and safety in the surgery, the driving to the work. In fact, page 17 right the way through to page 18 gives you a full list. Like I said, I don't think I need to explain this to you because the competence level of this in your current skills is already quite high. So page 17 to page 18 just talks about the acts. One thing I will state is if you are going to talk about how you're compliant with acts, do list them like this, like the Health and Safety of Work Act with the year 1974. If you don't know the year, do you know what? You can find that easily online through a search engine. So I'm just going to skim through because there's a lot of this which is more about self-learning than anything. I want to point out the key points for your operational plan. It's interesting really to understand the links between business strategy and operational planning. Now, if you remember me saying in the first lesson that before you even have an operational plan in place, the strategic plan is developed. And the strategic plan comes from the SWOT analysis, the PESTEL analysis. You could include Porter's 5 forces, which isn't in this ILM workbook. However, myself and the other assessors are going to be speaking to you more about that on a one-to-one basis. But remember in lesson 1, strategic planning is about long-term. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? It's important to understand that. Maybe you're growing in reputation, you want to maintain high standards, you're recruiting people, you want to increase workload or quality scores by 25%. Now, I know we spoke about PESTEL, and in the first episode, I actually asked you to look at the level 3 section 1 video on this YouTube channel because that'll give you a bit more of a defined view of a PESTEL analysis. But really at level 5, I want to show you this pyramid, which is on page 21 of your ILM workbooks, just for you to understand how a system works. So a strategy in an organization starts off with agreed senior leaders, outlines the long-term vision. So the strategy is the higher management, which is where you should be aiming to. You know, where you're talking about where do we want to be in 5 years' time? What are the goals of the surgery? What areas do we want to improve in? How are we going to improve our QOF or our customer service? Now, once that element's all complete, we're then going to look at the operational management. So this is where you probably sit right now as maybe a middle manager. Maybe you're a bit of both. Okay, now in this element, this is where you're going to talk more about the objectives. So you're taking the goals from your higher manager of where they visualize things to be, and you're going to translate this into an operational plan into daily tasks. So in order to get that goal, we need to improve scores by XXX over each year over the next 5 years. We need to employ 2 new nurses here or this here. We need to, so you're taking the vision and you're making it a little bit more realistic. And this is the level where you're at, and this is where smart planning will come more in. And then really the level below that is more tactile planning. So this is where you're going to look at more team learning planning, which is short term. So what are you going to do this week? What are you going to do today? Because those short term lead into medium term, which lead into your line manager's long term strategy. Now, you don't have to implement this into your operational plan, but I just really want to give you an understanding about where your operational plan sits in the grand scheme of things. Now, to be honest with you, there are a lot of things which I'm asking you to do within your operational plan, which will seem a lot more strategic, such as a PESTEL, SWOT and various other analysis. McKinsey's 7S model. That's great. We want to implement that in to show you've got the skills and competence to be strategic as well as operational, and it's going to look great within your portfolios. So page 21 and downwards, really we're going to have a look at how you're going to support the team. Really, a lot of this is self-researching. It's all about understanding how different people are different. Well, your clinical team is going to have different viewpoints on the operational plan to your administration and department team, to the management team, to the senior management team. You're all going to want different things. Now, it's important to understand that all these people here, they're stakeholders. Each stakeholder has a different saying what the business wants and wants to view. Okay, stakeholders could also be the patients. They have a stakeholder in the business. They're interested in having strong patient care. So everyone wants different things, and it's all about you as a manager to take this strategy and this operation and keep everyone happy. Hard to do in a surgery, right? Especially between your clinical and administration team. But start to think about different people's personalities. Email myself or your assessor and we can send you something called a tetra map. Now, this is about understanding what element your team are, whether they're earth, wind, water or fire. And by understanding what element they are will allow you to actually understand whether that person likes to absorb knowledge more analytical, or whether that person likes to absorb things more detailed, for example. And that's a very good tool to have as a manager, especially within a business and a surgery. I've been using it myself. Now, I'm going to just scroll down here because I'm not going to just read through every single page of this ILM workbook. You know, you have this. I just want to point out the key areas. So I'm now going to go straight into section 2 as we'd planned, which is now on page 25. And we're going to look at business development tools. The business development often implies sales, it says here. I've worked as a business development manager, and I will honestly tell you, business development is a bit of a mismatch of jobs. Business development sits somewhere in between sales and marketing. A lot of organizations don't really understand still where it sits or how it works. I know the company that I worked for was very similar. But yes, you're doing sales because you're developing the business, but you're also doing marketing at the same time because you're trying to continuously improve and grow existing business. So I found business development, it's a challenging role because you're trying to bring in new business and custom, but also you're trying to keep existing business and custom happy. I know you have business managers in some surgeries. Whether you have a business development, I don't know. But really another role that they would look at is a continuous improvement. I mean, you may not have a business development role, but you or someone else in the surgery is going to look more at continuous improvement. Because in business development, to keep people coming back to the surgery, you need to keep improving, or whether it's just a normal business. So this requires a constant analysis of things like physical resources, human resources, time, and the stakeholders. Remember what I said? Stakeholders could be anyone: the surgery, patients, employees, management, clinical staff. Now, within this, it's important to have a look at really how you can improve it. Now, in this unit, really, what it's asking you to do is understand how you can improve what you've got, which is PESTLE, and it is SWOT. Now, I don't need to explain that because, as I mentioned episode in lesson 1, if you haven't watched it, I've actually asked you to watch the level 3 section 1 video that I made on this YouTube channel because it explains this in a lot more detail. So rather than going through all these pages, by the way, the table on page 27 is great. I'm not going to explain it because I have already done so in that level 3 section 1 video. So it's important to understand your PESTLE. By the way, if you want to have a go at PESTLE analysis, page 28 will allow you to do that onwards. But I really want to see those PESTLE analysis being brought into your operational plan. Now, the reason why you can watch that in section 1, because I want to focus on these key areas, understanding how you can make continuous improvement in different ways. Now, there's a couple of different things on here. There are techniques which we can be using, such as Total Quality Management 6 Sigma and Crosby's 14 steps. Now, this workbook does explain them. Okay, this is the great thing about this workbook. I am just skimming through these pages, sorry. There are models in here which I would like you to implement into your workbooks. You can basically copy the design. Make them relevant, right? So for example, right now I'm looking at page 33 of the ILM workbook. If you're trying to eliminate waste from your workplace, you could use this form, but your operational plan might not be to that element, so you don't have to use that. But as we go down, it does talk a little bit about the models. The Kaizen model, translated to the word Kai, means change over time. It's Zen, which means good. So this model was used a lot more in manufacturing, mainly car manufacturing in Japan in the 1980s. And it allows you to look at your surgery or place of work through 5 different stages: tidiness, order, cleanliness, standardize, and discipline. Now, Kaizen focuses on removing waste where possible from 7 different forms. So tidiness, sort what is needed from the work form and what you need to remove later. Order, a place for everything and everything has a place. Cleanliness, keeping all workspaces clean and shiny. Standardize, once you tidy, make sure things are in order, make sure there's a product. And sustaining, the 5 S's, how to embed this into the culture of the organization. Okay, you can use this, you might not want to use this one, to be honest with you. This is a good one to work if you're looking at the workspace and how people work. Does the flow of work in the organization work well? Does it not work well? Do you need to look at it? This is a great tool in which will help you to analyze that. And again, if you wanted to use this model, by the way, I don't expect you to use every single model in your operational plan. At this stage, if you could use around 2 of what we're discussing, then that's absolutely great. Okay, speak to myself or your assessor about which ones. One thing that I would definitely ask you to look at is a root cause analysis. This is a great one to put into your operational plan, very straightforward. A root cause analysis is a technique that finds possible solutions to identify what the root cause of a problem is. So what is the root cause? Like a root of a plant. You may have all these problems in your surgery, but you need to find what is actually making it happen. And the 7 steps that you would follow to understand this technique is to step 1, identify the problem. So, is there an issue with service on reception desk or waiting times? Work out the major factors involved. Is it staff shortage? Is it training issues, for example? Identify possible causes to the problem. Now, you could do a rough note as a brainstorm. That's great. Take a picture of your phone and email it to me or your assessor, because it's good to show the final operational plan, right? But good to show all these little brainstorms and ideas in the run up to it. And analyze. Tell me, what you think the problem is based from your research. So this is about understanding a problem. This is on page 37 of your booklet. What I would do is just do a simple table with 4 boxes down here: step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. A title, what the problem is in your surgery, and in each separate box tell me a little bit about how you're going to define the surgery problem based on these areas. So have a look at that root cause analysis on page 37 of your workbook. Those which are a little bit more technical minded would like to have a look at a fishbone diagram. This allows you to understand basically problems, systems and planning. So let's have a look. In this example, in the fishbone diagram, volunteers have given out the wrong directions to the public at an event. And what has this had an impact on the site, on the task, on the people, on the control, on the equipment? This is quite a detailed one, and for that I'm actually going to be doing a separate video which will help you explain that a lot more. But you could include the fishbone diagram. Now let's scroll down. We're still in section 2 of your workbooks. What I'm going to have a look at now, this is another version of a root cause analysis. I asked you to do it in a table. It's a little bit more straightforward. However, if you want to really shine out to yourself and your employer, you could look at your fishbone analysis like this. The root cause, how do you solve the problem here, and you could bring each set of the steps into here. Now this workbook is great because, as you can see, you can interact with it. So talk about the environment, talk about the materials, the methods, the people, the equipment and the management, and bring that into this area. Have a go at it on your workbooks. It's quite interactive. This is on page 40 of your operational management plan, and just see how it goes from there. Now, like I said, I'm not asking you to talk about every single analysis. If I would be happy as an assessor if you did this fishbone analysis. You've already got the pestle analysis in there. Sorry, I'd be happy with this root cause analysis, the pestle analysis. If you want to do the fishbone one, you can. If you feel like you want to challenge yourself, that's on page 38. However, there are going to be other models and theories that I'm going to be talking about in the book. Because remember, you've already got pestle, SWOT, all these different models are building up. So we will be sending another video out next week, but don't forget to follow this through on your ILM workbooks, and we'll be speaking to you more one-to-one in the next face-to-face meeting. And don't forget, we're also available phone or email if you are struggling with everything.